Okay, so a lot of you have been wondering what's been going on with this whole almost plane crash thing that I went through, and I'm going to try to explain it. Unfortunately, I would rather not show my face or much of my body because I'm kind of disfigured with a contagious virus, but I'll do my best anyways. So, started off by finding out that my flight from Rome to Geneva was delayed by 1.5 hours because of bad weather in Geneva. And a friend of mine told me that it was snowing and windy there. Well, come to find out, that storm must have been worse than we originally planned. We didn't actually leave Rome until about 2.5 hours after our original departure time. And when we were first taking off, we took off, but you know how usually the plane takes off and then like you feel this huge like G-force and then it just kind of picks up and goes? We didn't really get that. It was like the plane was just like struggling to get up the whole time, and it was a really odd feeling. Now, there was nothing wrong with that, but it got me thinking, what if I was to go down right after we were taking off? I would have no time to be able to say goodbye to my family. So how was I going to solve that? Well, I was going to have something prepared in mind by the time we got to peak altitude, so that if something were to happen when we were way up at however many thousand feet, 30,000 feet, that if something were to happen, I would be able to whip out my GoPro and say goodbye before the plane ended up crashing. So I literally went through in my head and scripted this whole thing out. And don't make me seem crazy, because everyone does this sometimes. You go through like worst case scenarios and you kind of just play through it in your brain. Well, that's what I did. So what I imagined was, if something bad were to happen, I was imagining it being like all light inside the place and everyone's freaking out and I'm like the only calm one, and those things come down from the ceiling and you're like putting it over your face and I'm just like, hey mom, hey dad, just want to tell you guys I love you, like, yeah, that kind of thing. Well, it didn't quite work out like that in real life. So during this flight, we're going through some consistent turbulence throughout the whole flight, which isn't a big deal for me because I've flown a bunch and it just really doesn't scare me at all. So I went through the flight not thinking about it, even trying to sleep for part of it. But when we were coming back into Geneva, they said, then the flight pilot came over and said that it was going to be 25 minutes till landing. So I said, okay, I'm going to try to keep sleeping. So I put my head back down. But pretty much as soon as I put my head back down, all of a sudden the plane just like jerked. And it jerked so suddenly and so violently that literally people like almost got thrown out of their seats if it wasn't for their seatbelts. And then it jerked again a different way, and then a different way, and it was just like violent, and people were literally flopping back and forth like I was hitting the guy next to me. And the flight attendant started like stumbling down the aisleways like freaking out, trying to tell people like quickly to put up their tray tables and put their seats back in the right position and put their stuff underneath the seats in front of them. Like they were like scared to death, like running, stumbling down this thing as we're like literally just jerking everywhere. They're like going back and forth across the whole aisleway, and people's bodies are also going across the whole aisleway. So we're shaking like this, like most drastic turbulence I've ever felt in my life. And I was like, wow, like this is special. The seatbelt sign comes on, or it was on, but then they reiterated it or something. And the captain came over, the online said, and basically said, like, we're experiencing some turbulence. And we're all like, no duh, as we continue to flop our bodies around the whole plane. So, it's getting really bad at this point. And, like, very bad. And people are starting to, like, scream and stuff. And then, here. That's gonna be the Alps. Me and everyone on the plane thought at some point we just were going to take a nosedive and drop out of the sky. And then that's what we started doing. I think the pilots were getting worried about the turbulence in the clouds as we were coming back down into Geneva. So you could literally feel the plane turn downward and start heading down. And I think they did this on purpose to get underneath the clouds. But man, it was scary. Feeling the whole... You're just in your seat, and you can just feel yourself starting to tilt down like on a roller coaster. Surreal. So, we do one of those plane turns, and you know how plane turns are pretty drastic. Like you're pretty sideways when you're turning in a plane. And so we do one of these numbers, and we're going right over the Alps. And I only know this because every time oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. By this time, the lights inside the plane flickered and then went out completely. And all that was lit were the exit sign lamps or whatever. It was super creepy. And the plane was making all these really weird groaning noises. Like, I've never heard a plane make those noises before. It was like, I don't know, it was just eerie. It was straight out of a horror movie. So people are screaming. We're all shaking around. The plane literally at any moment could be gusting this way or that way, or dropping or going up or whatever. And we take this hard right, and we're going over the Alps, and I only know this because it's dark. And so because it's dark, every time you see a blink on the wing light, you can see, like, the light lights up the mountains, and you can see, like, right next to you, basically, is the snowy Alps. So we're up here, and I'm, like, jerking around like this, and then I was like, somehow I just knew this was going to happen. I knew it. Like, I'm going to have to say goodbye to my parents. Like, I'm glad I scripted this out in my head, like, a half hour ago. So I start rummaging around in my backpack while we're flopping around on this plane, and I'm trying to, like, pull out my GoPro, but it wasn't anything like I imagined. Remember, I imagined it being light and air masks dropping, which I'm surprised they didn't, because the cabin was making these weird noises, and we were popping our ears like crazy. But anyways, I was imagining all this, but really it was pitch black. I mean, you couldn't see a thing. And so really I was just putting my face right next to the microphone, just saying goodbye into my GoPro, and hoping that I would be able to stuff it back in my bag in time to protect it so someone could find it if something happened. So we're flying next to this thing, and as we're flying sideways, we're still, like, dropping, moving, like this. It was the most sketchy thing in the world. And at this point, the overhead compartments start opening, and people's luggage is falling into the center of the plane. And people and their things are just all over the plane. Like, it's chaos in there. But at the same time, no one's saying a word. They're either screaming or crying, or just holding on for dear life to the seat in front of them, both hands on the seat, just like, yeah, it was crazy. So we continue this turn, and we're going like madness, whatever, and then finally we, like, level out, and it calms down for a second, and then everyone just kind of sits back and takes a collective, like, sigh of relief. There's just stuff everywhere. I was in the very last row of the plane, and behind me you could hear all the not instruments, but, like, the kitchen supplies and all of that stuff all, like, crashing behind me. It was crazy. Anyway, so we're literally, like, it just looks like a tornado went through this plane, and everyone's freaking out, but for right now, everyone's kind of, like, calming down, like, oh, it's just really bad turbulence, we're gonna be okay. So we're getting lower, and then all of a sudden, it starts again, and we start, like, bouncing around again, and it's really, really bad. Like, I can't describe to you how bad this turbulence was. Like, it's literally, like, throwing your body left and right and forward and back. And I look outside, and this time I can actually see through the windows because you can see the lights of the city. I don't know if I definitely specified, but it was very late at night, close to midnight at this point. And the lights of the city just looked like streaks because we were shaking so much that you couldn't pick out any of the street lights. It was really weird. The flight attendant behind me in the jump seat in the back of the plane was, she was praying, which was both, like, a little bit, like, reassuring, the fact that she was praying, and also very not, because you would think flight attendants would be the ones most used to any kind of something going on in a plane. So if a flight attendant's praying, you know you're in trouble. Anyways, so we're coming in to try to do some sort of landing, but the plane is constantly, like, either sideways like this, or we're dropping, or gusting one way or another. And so we're coming in, and we're literally coming in like this, and I'm like, we're shaking and stuff, and I can see, like, we're coming closer to the runway, and I was like, I don't know how we're gonna do this. And I guess the pilot and everything decided the same thing. So they gunned it and took off, and we decided not to land, because I think they knew we weren't gonna make it. So we take off, and we do a really low turn. I mean, we stayed really low. I think they were scared that if we went too high, that maybe the turbulence would be worse. So we went really low, did a turn like this, more turbulence happened. We're still moving like this. We turn, come back around, and the second time we're coming in, and this time when we come in, we are coming right down on the right side. So complete opposite. The last time we were up like this, the right wing was up in the air. This time the right wing is down, and we're coming in, and I was like, oh no, we're gonna land, like, this is gonna land, I have a feeling our wing's gonna catch, and then we're just gonna, like, and then who knows what's gonna happen to our plane. So right before we get to the runway, we're still shaking like crazy. The right wing levels out for a second, and as soon as it does, the pilot floors it. I mean, we like gun it. It felt like full speed, and we came down and he dropped it, and we hit the pavement of the runway so hard that we actually bounced back up into the air. And when we did, we actually came back down on the right side of the wheels first. And then I thought, again, I was worried the wing was going to catch. But the right side of the wheels were down first, and then slowly, as we went down the runway really fast, you could feel the left wheels coming down. And finally, the left wheels caught on the ground, and we put full brake. Like, we stopped harder, 3 times harder than I've ever stopped in a plane before. And you know how that feels already. So we were literally plastered against the seats in front of us. Stopping, and finally we stop. And we came to a full stop on the runway, which never happens if you've ever been on a plane. You usually land and you slow down and then you just keep taxiing. This one, we landed and we just straight stopped because we had used so much runway just trying to get all of our wheels on the ground. I think we were pretty dang close to the end of the runway. But anyway, we stopped, and instantly people either got out of their seats ASAP, just right there on the middle of the tarmac, or they, some people started clapping, some people were still like crying and sobbing. Like, it was a mess. It was crazy. Anyway, so we finally get to the gate, and the captain comes out and personally greets everybody and tells them like he's sorry, that he hopes they have like a safe journey or whatever, and all this stuff. And he looked like he had just run like a 10K, man. Like, this guy was sweating. His shirt was white before, but he just looked skin tone at this point because it was so soaked through with sweat. But all in all, made it safely. But while we were up there, like bouncing around and stuff, there came a point where really throughout the majority of this, I was just waiting for them to, either I was waiting for our plane to like drop and catch the mountain up here, or that somehow we would lose control while we were up here because we were just moving so hard. So I was fishing around in my bag trying to get my GoPro out, and while we were in the middle of this turn, and I get my GoPro out and I start filming a goodbye to my family, and it's a really surreal moment when you know that there's a better chance that you die than that you live. And so to have to go through that was really odd for sure, but also kind of I think growing in a sense. So it was just a really weird experience to go through, but we made it. I don't think they maybe should have flown into Geneva that night, but they did, and we survived it. So got a good story to tell now, I guess. Anyways, that's what happened. See ya. So it happens to be Thanksgiving Day that I'm finally telling you guys what happened, and gotta say, pretty thankful to be alive, because there were definitely times on that flight, well, I'd say the majority of the last 25 minutes or so, that there really was a better chance of things not going well than of going well. And whether it being like the crazy turbulence where we're sideways above mountains, or when we're nose diving up in the air, or whatever it may be, just the outcome didn't always seem certain. And that's kind of a surreal feeling when you're in the middle of it, especially since you kind of imagine that those types of things would never happen to you. They seem too Hollywood, but it can happen to anybody. So I think it's a good reminder, slightly sobering, but something that I'm definitely very thankful for on Thanksgiving. And yeah, that's my story. That's all I got. Sorry. Hope you have a good day. Eat turkey, watch football, hang with the fam. Enjoy.